Welcome back to the Sports Business Take podcast, your home for sports industry news with a little personality. I'm Paul Hine. He is Zach Creekmore. And today we are joined by a very special guest, Mr. Dan Vance of the Fort Wayne Mad Ants, the G League team of the Indiana Pacers. How are you today, Dan?
I'm good. I don't want to make you restart, but we're actually the Indiana Mad Ants now. We're not the Fort Wayne Mad Ants anymore.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know because I was gonna make an episode graphic and I was gonna ask you what logo I should use. So it'll be a new logo. That's good.
Yeah, we're
Um,
actually based in Indianapolis full time now, so we're no
oh,
longer
are
the
you
Fort Wayne Mad
really?
Ants.
You
Yeah.
moved? Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
So Mr. Vance is the Director of Public Relations and Social Media at the now Indiana Mad Ants. So could you explain your role a little bit to the audience, what you do with the Mad Ants and kind of what your responsibilities are?
Yeah, I mean, the title kind of says a little bit of it. I handle all of our public relations, media relations as it relates to our players, our coaches, and our staff, media requests, a lot of stuff that we do. The G League is so national, and our players have such a high platform that we do a lot of national media as well as the local media. So that's my primary job. I also direct the social media. Things have changed a little bit since our move to Indianapolis, where I now have the backing of the Pacers digital team, who does a lot of the work that I was doing previously. But I still sit down with them, make game plans, and plan out the social media process to develop to, social media is so huge now for everybody in the industry. So it's definitely a better process now with heavier backing with us located in Indianapolis. And then there's some other jobs that I handle along the way. I do some stuff on the basketball ops side, help them out when it comes to ticketing and some things like that for our players. And then I also help with our theme nights. In the G League, we do a lot of theme nights, wear theme uniforms. And so I'm able to help with that, design some uniforms from time to time, and help plan out those events.
Nice. Yeah, I've worked in minor league sports before, so I totally understand where you're coming with the promotions. That's a huge key piece of getting your audience in the building for sure. So now, having worked with the Pacers social team, has that changed what platforms you guys think are the most effective, or what you've started to use?
I don't think that working with them has changed it. I think that working with them has opened us up to more options, to more different ways to do things. Take in previous seasons, we were kind of I don't want to say an outside entity, but we kind of worked our own separate space. And now that
Okay.
we're working with them in that shared space, it definitely brings what we were doing and ideas we had. And shifts a little bit with what they do and how that they have done things with the Pacers and the Indiana Fever in the past. So it's opened up a lot more eyes, and I think for them as well to understand that the G League is a completely different world than
Right.
the Pacers per se, similar to the WNBA and to the Fever, but still different. And so I think that it's been a great collaboration to be able to have their backing, have more minds involved. In Fort Wayne, we had a small staff. We had 13 people on staff total. There were three of us that worked on the social media end, and now we have this backing of a social media department that is a digital department that has 15 to 20 employees. So it definitely opens up more opportunities and just more minds and more creativity, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. Speaking of creativity, pretty much social media is all about that. So, what do you think is the most effective platform to get creative on? What is the most effective social platform for you guys?
Instagram has been big for us this season. It's definitely been a place where we've been able to get more creative with our video content. And that goes just not only game day, but our day to day content, our question of the day, bringing out personalities of the players. Instagram has been huge for that. And I think that we knew that before, but it's definitely shown this year. That's the platform where you're getting the younger core audience that you want to build up, and especially now with us in a move to Indianapolis and eventually in here in a couple of years to Noblesville, which is near Indianapolis. We have to build a whole new audience. We have to build a whole new fan base. And the way to build a fan base that's sustainable is by going after the younger audience. We saw that in Fort Wayne with the hockey team up there, the Fort Wayne Comets, is that they had generational fan bases. So now we're at a point where we have to rebuild a fan base, and an opportunity to build a generational fan base starts with the younger audience. And that's really where Instagram drives. and has driven us through this year. We actually got our G League report for January yesterday, and we had the number one social engagements in the entire G League, which is the first
Wow,
time that's happened in Mad Ant's history. So
that's
we've moved
awesome.
up from being a 12th, 13th last year. And we've been steadily, I think, sixth and then fourth in November and December this year. And to be number one shows that what we're doing is working, but it also shows that the power of social media, especially when you're looking at kids, ages 15 to 24, and that demographic, it really moves the needle on presenting our players in a certain way and presenting our organization and the personalities that make it up, whether it's the basketball content or the stuff beyond basketball.
Yeah. 15 to 24, that's us. So I guess we're your target audience.
Yeah, exactly.
Congratulations on being number one. Zach, I know you have some questions. Sorry, I
Yeah,
was
absolutely. I just want to point out a couple of awesome things you said, and I think really just focusing on generational fan bases. We've talked about it, and I think the U.S. right now, and I'm curious if you agree, is going through a revolution of how our sports work. We're seeing multi-divisional and multi-staged sporting teams and organizations come up. If I'm a big soccer guy, so I look at MLS and their USL teams and how MLS Next is building up and how all this infrastructure is being built. And I'm curious how you think in the same way in basketball of how does that one streamlined process of you guys all being in the same place, being on the same team, kind of help support that? But also, how is that building generational fan bases and building all that multi-divisional connection kind of work out in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, it builds it so strongly because we're building our own fan base, but now we're also pulling from a Pacers fan base that knew about the Mad Ants, that supported the Mad Ants. But it's very different when we're in Central Indiana, and Indiana is such a hotbed for basketball anyway. But Central Indiana, around Indianapolis, and in our new home in Noblesville, which is about 20 minutes north of Indianapolis, that we'll be at here in a couple of years. It's just an amazing area. So building that, we can focus in on the generational of building the younger fan base, but then the established Pacers fan base, the parents that have been a generational fan base for the Pacers that the Mad Ants didn't have before. This is our 17th year in existence. The Mad Ants has been around for a long time, but that's not really generational. The Pacers have that foundation. And so to be able to pull from their foundation, I think is really nice. And the support staff and the support system has been tremendous. And it's been, I think, eye-opening for them. They've owned this organization since 2008. They bought the Mad Ants back then. But you have a 2-hour gap between Fort Wayne and Indianapolis. So for people in Indianapolis to really learn about us, even the Pacers sports entertainment staff, I think has really opened up so many opportunities for them, for us, and how we can cross-brand, cross-promote in ways they already do with the Fever. If you're in Indianapolis, and I know you guys aren't, but people see that the Fever and the Pacers have worked so well together with the WNBA and the NBA, and now to be able to be in there and in that same, way of thinking, that same, ability to streamline things has been really important for us, and I think really important for them as well.
Awesome. Beautiful.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So we were talking about how the collaboration has changed a little bit of what strategy you guys have been using. So being a minor league franchise, how would you say that changes the strategies that you do use approaching social media? And part two to that question, what is one strategy that the Mad Ants will be using in 2024?
Well, I think the main strategy that we approach with, honestly, is the player personality. We have great guys, and I think that the NBA has done such a great job the last several years embracing social media. Our Pacers digital team has done as well. Is that there was a time, and I think we can all admit it, that the NBA and professional basketball, that some of the players just it got a bad rap. That NBA players were, a certain way, standoffish, rude, like whatever it was. But social media has allowed us to show that we have such a great group of guys that have big personalities, big history, different experiences. Jordan Bell, who won an NBA title with the Golden State Warriors, is with us. Elfrid Payton, who played 500 games in the NBA, is with us. Down to rookies like Oscar Shibwe, who is from the Democratic Republic of the Congo and played at Kentucky. And they have all these different stories to tell. And I think that's a key component in minor league sports that social media has opened up so much that previously we just had to go off of the traditional media that I work with, newspapers, magazines, newscasts, and now we can tell our own stories. And so that's definitely a big focus. in minor league sports, it's personality driven. The reality for us, especially moving to Central Indiana, is the fans that we get in the arena while we're playing at Gainbridge Fieldhouse this season, they're not showing up for the most part to watch the Mad Ants. They're showing up for the people. We get a big Kentucky crowd. Lexington is not too terrible of a drive to Indianapolis. We have Kyle Mangus, who played at Indiana Wesleyan NAIA school, which is an hour north of Indianapolis, and we get a big contingent for him. So we have to really drive home those personalities, the stories they have. And in the G League, one of the tough parts about that is you have about a year to do it. It's very rare that guys return for multiple years. We're lucky we have a guy named Pedro Bradshaw, who's from the Louisville area in Kentucky, that is back for a third season. Jordan Bell was with us a couple of seasons ago, came back. Alfred Payton joined us at the end of last season. But the G League has such a heavy turnaround that you really need to push these guys' personalities to draw in fans, sure, but then also to build the brand of the kind of quality people that the Mad Ants and Pacer Sports Entertainment are trying to bring in. That is a major focus. The basketball is the basketball. People who want basketball content on social media are always going to look for that. But what can we do to separate ourselves with, whether it's silly little questions or personality profiles? How can we separate our players from the other guys that are in the G League? Because they're all chasing the same dream, right? They're all trying to get to the NBA. So what makes our guys different? And for me, the social media and the PR end, that's been my goal for the last 4 years since I joined the organization, is how do we show our guys in a different light than everybody else?
Yeah, that makes sense. One of the most successful things in social media content in sports has been personality driven. And I think that's really a big piece of what minor league sports is all about. So definitely can identify with that, having worked with the Portland Sea Dogs.
Yeah, I mean, and it's fun, right? The personality stuff is the fun stuff. While the Mad Ants are not, we haven't delved into the TikTok, and the Pacers have a little bit, but that's what drives the world at this point is quick. You have 30, 45 seconds to capture somebody's attention, to make them want to know more about you as an organization, to make them want to know more about the Oscar Sheeways, the Kyle Manguses of the world, and what can you do in that time. And it's been a lot of fun because we're able to just come up with different ideas. And like I said, the silly questions is fun for me. Last season we did a question of what's the largest animal you could beat in a fight, and some of our guys' answers were great. We had a guy from Lithuania who said he could fight a lion, and we had guys that were like an ant. I don't know. So you get all this different kind of personality and fun stuff and little quips that can really just as silly as it may sound, I guess, in 30 seconds, you can get somebody, you can get a fan, you can get a fan for life, for a player or for your organization. And I think that really makes the content gathering part fun.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you're saying, especially with the public relations and all that aspect of you're focusing on one, growing our 20% because you have that really strong audience of who are basketball fans in Indianapolis, who have been Pacers fans and Mad Ants fans and have followed players to your team, in addition to really how can we grow that audience of what are the people who might not originally watch our content and really grow that. So I think that's super cool. My question is, as director of public relations at the Mad Ants, what do you consider to be the most important message for a sports franchise and its branding?
I think that I don't know that there's a general one. I think that it is brand specific, and you need to go with what makes your brand so strong. We're in a part right now where we're kind of in an in between world. We're playing at Gainbridge Fieldhouse while our arena is being built in Noblesville, so we're only able to go, I would say 30% of where we really want to be and where we amp up. And so in Fort Wayne, and what our eventual message will be in Noblesville, and we've been able to do a little bit in Indianapolis, is that we are a family oriented. We want to have something for everybody. And it kind of goes with how we do our social media. Facebook we see is definitely for the older crowd. There's younger people on Facebook, but Facebook is where you get you get the moms, the dads that are driving spending habits for a family. And Instagram is where you're going after the younger crowd, and Twitter's a little bit of a mix of both, and obviously X, whatever it is right now, and you guys know it's been kind of a weird world the last year,
Sure.
and we've all had to adjust how we use that space a little bit differently. So the branding and the messaging, it kind of goes hand in hand with that, is that we have to have something for everybody. In Fort Wayne, we called it entertainment. that we wanted to have something for everybody. The game is there if you want to watch it. If not, there's a kids zone over here your kids can go to. There, great halftime acts, great national anthem singers. That there's good food, and the environment I think is something that you really want to build. So I don't think that every team has just one that you would angle. I think it's specific to the team and what you want to drive. There are teams in the G League and in minor league sports that it's all about the sport, and that's the focus. And then there's chances to have fun. I think one of the things that benefits the Mad Ants and where we've been is our team president Tim Ballman has a history in minor league sports. He was in minor league sports, in minor league baseball for a long time. Worked in the Red Sox organization, and so minor league baseball, and this, Paul, it's a little bit different. It's just kind of
It is.
fun
It is
and
different.
goofy, and not take yourself too seriously. The product
No,
on the
I
court can be serious, the product on the field can be serious, but the environment for the fan, it can be fun. And the G League allows you to do that with theme nights. We've had a Dino night this year. We had a Marvel night. We just came off an Island night earlier this week where we were special theme jerseys, raise money for charities in the community. But also it adds a little bit of, you can't take yourself too seriously when you're out there wearing a jersey with a giant dinosaur on the side of it, or our Island night the other night, we had very colorful, bright jerseys with palms on them, and so it has the ability to just be a fun environment, and that's really what we push.
absolutely. Minor league sports is all about the fun environment. I
Mm-hmm.
wore a lobster suit out on the field several times. This lobsterman suit out on the field several times this year. So I definitely understand where you're coming from. So staying on the content side of things, I want to ask you, what do you think your favorite piece of content or story that you guys have done has been since you've been there?
Ooh, wow, that's tough. As far as social media, it's definitely we do a lot with the fun, silly questions. I think one of the things that is fun for me, we did one earlier this year, is when we get the guys involved with their college teams, and we had a
Okay.
bet. We had a bet between a couple players before a Miami of Florida game, which we have Isaiah Wong who played there last year, and Oscar Shibwe, which Kentucky won the game, and then so Oscar brought one of his college jerseys that had to be worn during practice. And so that kind of stuff is, it drives the personality. Professional basketball players are very like, I don't know, they have just kind of like this home turf feeling about their colleges. So involving that kind of stuff with their colleges, they're very passionate about college, and I've learned that all along. So March Madness every year we try to do stuff about their colleges. So I think anything that incorporates that, because it's crazy how passionate they are. Whether it's Kentucky, we've had Duke players, we had a Villanova player last year, Arizona guys. They're very passionate about their colleges, and everybody thinks their college is better than everybody else.
Definitely a point of pride in basketball.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. You mentioned earlier how you started your career in journalism and as a sports writer, and a bit outside of that with newspapers and news media overall. I'm curious to see, as you've continued into this journalism, media, and promotion space, if you could speak to how writing and journalism has translated into your role today,
Mm-hmm.
and what are some key lessons that you learned throughout that process and throughout your development as a professional?
Yeah, I think that the number one thing is I know what I would want from a PR guy. If I'm covering a team, I know what I'd want. I know when I do game notes before every game, I want all the information, the stats I want. And that has been huge because I'm going at it as I know I would want this. So the writers who are covering us, the people who I'm sending information to, whether it's a press release or the game notes, or setting up interviews or pitching stories, I have I think a different kind of a track in my head about what they want. And so I think that's huge. I think that the balance of that is that obviously helps on the writing end. It helps the communication part. Communication in minor league sports is huge, especially when you're working the G League. I can obviously speak on specifically. You're working with a bare bones crew a lot of times. I talk about the staff we had in Fort Wayne. Right now, we're operating with technically a business staff that are full-time only Mad Ants of just myself and the team president. We have a basketball side. We have our general manager, our coaches. We have a great social media person that is a point person from the Pacers that I work with specifically. We have a great player relations person, but they're Pacers, Mad Ants. So the communication is huge to make sure that things don't get lost in translation, and everything is so fast paced that you have to communicate well. And I think the journalism world, working on deadlines, really prepared for that extremely well. You know, in journalism, you have a deadline. If you miss it, that you miss it. Your story's not getting in the paper. You're probably in trouble on your job. And so this is such a fast paced world that you have to make split second decisions. You have to have things done in a very timely manner to make sure everything flows smoothly for the other people. It's kind of, the behind the scenes. The basketball team, the basketball ops is the talent, and everything should be easy for them. And so, behind the scenes, it's the goal of to make things easy. And I translate that in journalism. You're the writer. You're working hard to make life easy for the person who's reading your piece, the person who's going online and looking for your story. And so it's kind of similar in that way, that you're just the person that makes sure that everything is lined up so that the talent at the front doesn't have to work as hard for these things while they're working on the other end on the other things that push the organization.
Yeah, that makes total sense. You mentioned communication being the most important quality to work in minor league sports. Do you think that's the most important quality to work in social media in general? Me wanting to work in professionally social media myself, I'd be super interested in that. And part two to that question, what are you looking for in someone you hire in a social media team?
Yeah, I think that the communication is a huge role. Everybody's got when you get into that creative space and the content creation space, everybody has their own opinion of how things should look, how things should be done. And so to be able to communicate properly, I think is huge, because you don't, if I want things done this way and the person who's my point, Alex at the Pacers, wants things done a different way, if we don't communicate adequately and we're just like pushing our own ideas, then nothing ever gets done. Somebody's not going to be satisfied, and then it creates a tension, which is so hard in content creation. You have to work well together. If you guys weren't getting along, this would be a hard podcast to do.
For sure. Yeah.
You have to be able to communicate your ideas and say, Paul has idea A and Zach has idea B, and they're both stubborn about it, but how do we meld them? And so that
Right.
communication is critical in that way. So yeah, I really do think it is the biggest part of the social media world, to be able to communicate and come together and that, digital creation. As far as what we look for, I think that doing something different is always huge. You can always fall back on, we've done this in the past, it's been successful, it'll be successful again, but what are the new ideas? And that's hard. Social media,
Taking a
there are,
risk.
yeah, there's so many, there's so many different ideas already out there. So to come up with something completely unique, something completely different that nobody else is doing, whether it's nobody else in sports, which is very hard, or nobody else in the G League, which we're in a space where that's a little bit different. G League social media, for I would say a third of the teams, isn't very advanced, and then you have the other 2/3 that are kind of battling for that higher space. So you have to be creative. You have to be able to bring different ideas to the table, or how you can take these older ideas and make them something unique or something that's really going to stand out. And I think that's what we look for the most is the creativity. What can we do differently? Because that's kind of the rat race of social media, is you have to be, if you're not first, you have to be different. Being first can be very, very hard. So if you can find somebody that can come up with those ideas that makes you first in anything you're doing, whether it's a video, whether it's graphically, whatever it is, that's great. But how can we be different if we can't be first? So I think that's the key component to look for.
For sure. That's definitely something I've experienced. I handle most of our social media stuff. So whenever I post something, I'm trying to think about what's a new piece of content that I can use that we haven't done before. Like, what's a new way that I can try this? I work for the athletic department here. Yesterday, I just made a video for the basketball team, and I used slow motion for the first time in it. So I definitely understand where you're coming from, of like trying new things is going to lead to success. And that's definitely super important in social media.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at, I mentioned TikTok earlier. You look at that. There's so many different kinds of social media, so many different kinds of digital content out there right now that it's huge, because everybody makes content, right? Everybody makes content at this point, and it's not just sports teams. It's comedians, it's actors, it's athletes, it's activists. everybody makes content. So how can you make yours stand out is the big key, and it's not easy.
No, it's definitely not. All right, Zach, I've been holding you up for a bit.
You're good. I love what you just said about everyone makes content. I think that's so true and so powerful. Of like everything that you do truly is an opportunity for you to brand and advertise yourself, even as individuals, but also as a franchise. I worked with AC Connecticut over the summer, and I think we had a lot of opportunities. And I'm looking forward to it because I'm going back there this summer. We have tons of opportunities of things that we do that are unique that we can brand and advertise, and sometimes we don't. So you really have to bite at that opportunity. Um, my question for you is I noticed I was looking through your LinkedIn, so a lot of mine are on your past roles, so I apologize. But I noticed you had owned your own business that you co-founded, which I thought was super cool. But could you share your experience as an entrepreneur slash business owner? Phoenix Communications VA. I'm not sure if VA or you mean Virginia.
I do.
Um, what is it like? What was your favorite part of that journey? And what would be your advice to someone looking to found their own company?
Yeah, I have had a couple of startups in my life. I got into this role a little bit later in life than a lot of minor league PR people do, but that was a big one in Virginia. I was living down there. I worked at a newspaper, a small town called Vinton, just outside Roanoke, Virginia. And when that newspaper closed, as many newspapers have done over the years, founded a company. We did, promotional material, photography. We did have a short-lived magazine that we put together as well for the region there, and even now I have it's kind of a side gig. I started a website called OutsideTheHuddle.net, and it covers high school basketball and football in Northeast Indiana. I founded that with a friend after we left the newspaper that I was at, my last newspaper job. So I think the big thing is just it's almost kind of like what we were just talking about with social media. Be different. Do something different. What can you offer that is unique? In Virginia, the photography there, and we did a lot of photography, whether it was action photography, events, sports team photos. We did that kind of stuff. We wanted to be different. Our designs were different. If you're ordering a set of trading cards for your kid and they play middle school basketball, you want it to look different. You don't want it to just look like a picture. When I was a kid, you got trading cards and it was just the picture, and they just like glued a thing on the back that had your height and weight. It was, it was silly. So to be different, to be unique, and stand out, and be bold. At the end of the day, you got to take the risks, especially if you're starting up something on your own. You need to be bold in what you're doing, and reach for the stars. Is one of the things I love about the position I'm in now. I have people reach out to me all the time that want to come take pictures, that want to come take videos at games. Some of them have organizations behind them. Some of them are college students that are just, like you guys, trying to find your own way. And I love having those people out. We usually have 8 to 10 different photographers or videographers at every one of our games that are just, we had a high school kid came out the other day. I had an open spot. He reached out and I said, come out and do it. Be bold, take risks. The worst thing that anybody is ever going to do to you when you're doing that, whether when you're in an entrepreneurial situation, is say no. And
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys have heard no. I've heard no. It's a no, but a no doesn't break you because there's going to be yeses. So if you get 10 no's, but you get one big yes, that's huge. And I think that's what helped me in that world, in that space with things I've done, and help. Well, I'm able to help people now is, you know, college student reaches out, hey, I'd love an opportunity to come take pictures of Maddox game. And I think they're shocked quite often when I say, okay, yeah, sure. Here's the directions. Where do you pick up your credential on game day? Let me know when you're here. We'll go out to the court. I'll show you, the setup. And you got to take chances because the yeses that you eventually get are worth all the no's that you're going to get in the process.
That's definitely an opportunity I might be interested in, to be honest.
Yep.
I just started doing videography and photography. Recently, I'm doing a videography internship this summer with a college summer league team, kind of like a Cape Cod league team. They're a futures league team. So definitely something that I might consider and something we can talk about off air. But I want to go back to a second. I want to go back a second to what you were talking about with the newspapers. Having been on both sides of the media now, in the newspaper side and now in a director of public relations role, has that changed how you approach your job now, having been in the newspaper side?
Um, I don't. I don't know. It's a hard one to answer, because I never saw myself in a public relations role. I've been in journalism and newspapers. I started writing for my high school paper when I was a freshman in high school. That was a long time ago. So I did that for so long. That was just who I was. I never saw myself in the PR world. Was very lucky to find this position when I did. It just kind of worked out timing wise. So, it gives me more knowledge to do the PR side. But it's hard to say. I don't know. I don't know how to do my job any differently than how I do it, I guess. So it's hard to say if, anything would be different if it wasn't for the newspapers, other than the fact that I just feel like I have a good idea of what the PR side of things anyway that people would want from me. And that includes the story ideas. Nobody's going to know these players other than coaches probably more than me. I'm around them all the time, so I can pitch unique stories that a sports writer, and I get this because I was on that, and I want to do a story on uh, Jordan Bell because he played in the NBA, he won an NBA title with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. That's cool. I want to do a story on him, and I can say, okay, well, do you know about JB's family? Do you know about his son, his entrepreneurial side, his side getting involved with nonprofits? I can be able to pitch those better, and I think that's something that, as a sports writer, I didn't get much out of PR departments. Is you take them your story, and they say yes or no. So I think that would probably, if you had to pick one thing, that's something I can do differently, and that I try to do differently. Is okay, you may like Stephen Hicks. He's one of the all-time Mad Ant greats. He played in Fort Wayne for years. He's with us this year. Do you know that he was one of the highest-rated youth tennis players in the nation when he was a kid? People don't know that, and so I think that kind of stuff is fun. Not only be able to pitch, but then with the role I'm in and being in minor league and professional with the Pacers, PR is here and social media is over there somewhere. With minor league, with me being right here in the middle, those are also stories we can tell. So so that aspect of it, I think, is unique.
That's awesome to hear about. Zach, do you have anything else or
A couple things that I just wanted to
all
point
right,
out.
awesome.
First, I wanted to say really well said. The journalism aspect and how that connects is so important. And I think for people looking to work in social media, looking to work in, as you kind of mentioned, if you're looking to work in social media, journalism, sports media, or looking to work, especially even in front office operations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Be able to have that connection of I understand what these people are looking for, and that way I can specialize the content that we're making and collaborating on, and make really unique and special moments like the ones that you just described, where they're able to identify these super special connections that identify those personality portions you're talking about way back in this episode, right?
Yeah.
In addition, I also wanted to point out, and I may have just left my head and I may be forgetting it, but it's okay. Looking at you as a person, but also how it's all worked together, it's just really great to hear from you, and also kind of what your vision, how it's all worked together. I think what you have said has been super powerful. So I appreciate you taking the time
Agreed.
with us.
Agreed.
And also sharing on your entrepreneurial journey and your journey from journalists in freshman year of high school throughout founding your own newspaper company, which I think is all amazing. So thank you.
Yeah, you definitely have an amazing story. We do have one more question. We ask the same closing question to all of our guests. So if you could go back in time and work for any sports team that you wanted to, what event or moment would you want to work or cover?
Wow, that's hard. I'm a, who I'm going to give you two. I'm going to
Okay.
give you two because it's hard. I'm a diehard Duke basketball fan. Cameron Indoor Arena right behind me. That was the first full basketball game I ever remember watching. I was 7 years old. It was the Duke Michigan national title game, to date how old I am a little bit. Um, and so uh, that moment that I became a Duke fan would be huge. But I would say the shot, Christian Laettner, the year before I was even a Duke fan, beating Kentucky. Uh, it's known as the shot for a reason. It's one of the greatest moments in basketball history. So that would be one. But then when I was a kid, I was a really big baseball fan. Probably more so than basketball at that point, though basketball became my biggest passion. And in Fort Wayne, Indiana, which is where I grew up, you had two options. You watched WGN and you watched the Cubs, or you watched TBS and you watched the Braves. And that was it. So everybody here was a Cubs fan, close to Chicago. I was a Braves fan, so the '95 World Series they won. David Justice was my favorite player, and he hit the home run that was the 1 run game. It was a 1-0 game, Game 6 of the World Series against the Cleveland Indians, and Justice hits the home run, and they win the World Series. So one of those two moments, the shot or David Justice's home run.
That's awesome to hear about. I didn't know you grew up in Indiana. That's very interesting that
Yep.
you're now working for a professional team there. Has that like changed your experience at all, or your viewpoint on that?
It's been interesting. I think that it was one of the perks when I started this job in Fort Wayne. As I lived in Virginia for 4 years when I worked down there, but born and raised in Fort Wayne, and so my connections were very good. Obviously, I worked a lot of my journalism work was in Fort Wayne, so I had really
Oh,
great
sorry, Fort
connections.
Wayne, not Indiana. I got that wrong.
Yeah,
My
yeah,
bad.
but yeah. So in Fort Wayne, so to be in Fort Wayne and in Indiana was great, and I love Indiana and I love basketball, and so I think that it's just kind of the perfect situation. Born and raised here in the state of Indiana, love basketball, and to have this opportunity with such a great organization has been fantastic.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Dan Vance, for coming on today. This was
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
great. And thank you guys as always for listening. And if any of you are looking to take advantage of an opportunity, like he mentioned about going out to take a video or do photos for the Mad Ants, I assume you can reach out to him. Do you want to provide your
Mhm.
contact info?
Yeah, you can email me at dvance at pacers.com, and to play off that, no matter where you are, take the risk. You guys are in Maine. Email the guy at the Maine Celtics. Around wherever you're at, take the risk. Like I said earlier, the worst thing somebody can say is say no. So take every opportunity you can and build yourself up however you can.
I think that's a great lesson to take out of this interview. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I think we'll leave it at that. As always, thank you guys for listening.